Okay. All right, good afternoon, everybody who is here in the room. Thank you for being here today. Also, welcome to everybody who is online. I know we have lots of people live streaming. This is the second part of our Idahoans for Openness in Government, IDOG seminars, just really focusing on transparency and openness in government. It's always a privilege to be able to participate in these sessions. Controller WOOLF and I have been doing a lot of this for a while, along with Brian Kane, formerly from the Attorney General's office, and most notably Betsy Russell, who I'll introduce here in a minute. I think, what's awesome for me just walking in, I was just before this session meeting with our entire elections team, gearing up for the 2026 election cycle. They're having an offsite today to do planning and to come together. And I got to spend the lunch hour with them waxing poetically about the Declaration of Independence and why we do the work that we do in the election space. And as we were looking at the Declaration, if you ever have a chance, especially headed into this coming year with the 250th anniversary of the Declaration in America 250, is to look at that document and actually read through it. All of us are familiar with the phrases about life, liberty, and happiness, right? And the sacrifice that our founding fathers made. So if you look at the beginning and the end, you'll see those pieces. But overwhelmingly, most of what the Declaration of Independence is a list of grievances against our government. And it's things like not being open and not being heard and not being seen. And what IDOG does is it's an advocate to make sure that the public has access to their government, that they can be seen, that they can be heard. And the sessions that we're leading are really sharing all of the different things, whether it's Idaho's open meeting law, our public records law, looking at our state finances today. But this is your ability to access your government and to have a say in the process. So whether it's like working with my team and voting at the ballot box, or participating in sessions like these, or I know some of you in the room sitting in countless hearings and other things, this is the way that you get to be engaged. And so all of us who participate in IDOG are proud to be able to share these lessons with everybody and to hopefully see the public more involved in the process. As government officials, too often, we want to see more people involved in this so that we really are leading with self-governance, just like Thomas Jefferson and the other founding fathers sought when they wrote the Declaration. So I'm obviously on a very philosophical bent today with everything going on, but before I kick it over to my good friend, Controller WOOLF, I want to introduce really the champion behind all of this, the person who's been leading these efforts for many, 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 many years, who I will describe. She gave me an official bio to read, and I set it aside because I didn't think it was necessary. Betsy Russell is one of the most missed people in the Idaho State Capitol building, especially during the legislative session. Too many state officials, whether it's legislators, executive branch, as well as the entire lobby corps and the public, miss the Eye on Boise blog, which she ran for, I think, almost 20 years, winning numerous awards for her work because she would detail all the different things. At times, it would feel like Betsy was in 5 rooms at once, and you could keep tabs on what was happening. And while there are many people trying to keep up with the great work that she has done, even they would attest, it was a lot. And so since her retirement, she has been very much missed in the space. But as you can see today, because we're all here really because of her efforts and her push, she's still a champion for the Idaho Press Corps, for the Idahoans for Openness in Government, and really for continuing to see people engaged with their government. So with that, I want to turn it over to the star of the show, Betsy Russell.
I'm Betsy Russell. I've been retired for 3 years as a newspaper reporter, but this is something that I started with several others back in 2004, and that I wanted to continue even after I retired. So that's why I'm here today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about IDOG. It stands for Idahoans for Openness in Government, and it's a nonprofit coalition for openness in government that's affiliated with the National Freedom of Information Coalition. There are similar coalitions in about 44, 45 states, And we cross the lines. We have people from the news media, people from government, people from civic organizations, library organizations, and just interested citizens, attorneys. And what we all share is that we want to foster open government supervised by an informed and engaged citizenry. This is not partisan. This is not political. This is just about doing things the right way for all of us here in our state. We believe that we all benefit when the public, the media, and government officials are fully aware of the public's rights to access government information and observe the conduct of the public's business. So, you can submit questions during the program today in two ways. For those of you who are in the room, you have cards on which you can write questions and hold them up, and a volunteer will bring them up to the two moderators, who are Secretary McGrain and myself. And if you are online, and I should say that there are more than 3 times as many people participating today online as there are in person, you can submit your questions by email to idogquestions@gmail.com, and that is the address right there. Also, the full recording of today's session and all the slides will be available on IDOG's website afterward. It'll be a few days before our volunteers get that up, but it will be there. And our last session on campaign finance is already up and available. That website is www.openidaho.org. I would like to thank our partners in this effort: State Controller Brandon WOOLF, Secretary of State Phil McGrain, the Idaho Association of Cities, the Association of Idaho Counties, the Idaho Press Club, Idaho Public Television, Attorneys for Civic Education, the BSU School of Public Service, and the University of Idaho College of Law. There are 2 handouts. I forgot to bring them up here. One of them, I believe, looks like that. And it shows you all the sessions that we're doing in this series. There are 4 of them, and there will be 2 more in January. Thank you, Tyler. So there's the first handout. And then the second handout is just a little bit about IDOG and who we are. And you're welcome to take a look at that. If you want to support IDOG's efforts, we are a 501c3 nonprofit funded entirely by foundations, grants, and donations, and you can do so on our website. If you're an attorney, thanks to our partnership with Attorneys for Civic Education, you can receive continuing legal education credit through the Idaho State Bar for participating in today's workshop. Please sign up on the list in back if you are attending in person, but only if you are an attorney, because if you're not an attorney, continuing legal education credit will not do you any good. If you're participating online, please follow the instructions you received in an email from the bar, or email Teresa Baker at the bar and she will connect you with that. We are very fortunate today to have Idaho State Controller Brandon WOOLF as our featured speaker on Transparent Idaho, Townhall Idaho, and how to access state and local government data in Idaho online for free. Brandon is Idaho's 21st state controller. He grew up on a dairy farm in Preston, Idaho, and yes, it is that Preston of Napoleon Dynamite fame. He earned the rank of Eagle Scout, graduated from Utah State University with a degree in political science, and holds an MBA from Boise State University. Brandon actually started at the state controller's office in 1997 as an intern and has served in an array of positions, including bureau chief, division administrator, and chief of staff. He was appointed to fill the remainder of his predecessor Donna Jones's term in 2012 and confirmed as state controller by a unanimous vote of the Idaho State Senate. He was then elected by the people of Idaho to a full term of office in 2014 and was re-elected in 2018 and 2022. His wife of more than 30 years, Jana Lee, also hails from Preston, and they have 3 adult children, 1 grandchild, and 2 more on the way. Congratulations. Brandon started Transparent Idaho in 2012 to provide better access for Idaho's citizens to state government financial data. He just went and did it. And it has expanded significantly since then. He has made government transparency a hallmark of his tenure as state controller, and he and Governor Brad Little launched Townhall, Idaho in 2022 to serve as an online one-stop shop for public meeting information for state executive branch agencies. Please join me in welcoming our presenter today, State Controller Brandon WOOLF.
Oh, thank you. I'll move this over here. And this mouse is being a little, so I brought batteries just in case I may have Jess help you out here. Well, welcome. I know it's a busy, fun time of year. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and Happy Holidays to everyone. What a fun time of year. It's busy but fun. My wife says she loves the hustle and bustle, and I don't know if I like it as much, but we enjoy that hustle. And on that note, Betsy said, my wife Janely and I, today is our anniversary, so it's our 31st year of anniversary, so I would special shout out to her. I tell her we'll do a PBJ's for lunch another day instead of today, but so just a special shout out to my young bride. I also want to give kudos to my team. I have several here in the office that are from my office that are here in the audience today, and just thank them for their work and their service. And Phil and I, Secretary and I, we get to, like yesterday, we get to present the big checks and do all that, and the ribbon cuttings, new things, but it really is our teams that that really do all the work, that do all the things, everything that we do. And so we couldn't do anything without our special team members. And so I know Phil has a great team, but I always love to say I have the best office in state government. I don't know how you prove that or not, but I always say that we do. And just grateful for my team, so I love them. And thanks to all of you for being here today. You could be somewhere else having so much fun, but you're here to learn about some more transparency, and those that are online. A special thanks for taking your time to be here, be online and listen and help, and those that will watch this later on, I hope it will be a helpful tool and experience for you. So, as Betsy mentioned, when I first became controller back in October of 2012, the buzzword at the time was kind of transparency or transparency websites or different things from a financial in our peers, so the other state controllers' offices. And that was kind of the topic du jour. And it was the discussion at the time amongst my peers and my patriots there around the country. And so from the standpoint, we said, what can we do to build something? And so when I became controller in October, we went live with the first one, transparency website, in January of 2013. And it was all PDFs. And PDFs are great and everything that way. You can get the data information, but they're not as helpful to find, search, and slice and dice the data as much. But we did it in-house without any appropriation money. We found some I think it was $28,000 that we scrapped together from some different savings throughout the office, pay our IT team to put our first initial Transparent Idaho together. So it was a great piece. And so you take this whole thing and step back and say, what was the whole reasons why? And looking at the big picture of transparency, and I want to walk through with you today of just more of the why behind it. I'll share and talk a little bit about Townhall and share and talk with Transparent Idaho, and then wrap up talking a little bit about future items that we're looking at. And then obviously we'll have the question and answer with the Secretary and Betsy. So my goal today, for raise of hands of those that are here in the room, how many of you have been to Transparent Idaho, the site? Okay, so we're looking at 90%. My part is for those that have been there, and some of you have been on it before, and to make this a stronger tool and opportunity for you to expand even further in your knowledge and understanding. And for those that haven't been to it, just to give you a great glimpse of what exists. And my goal today is to leave you as new transparency ambassadors. Because my part is, if it just sits there, it's just going to gather dust. But if you help share the word of what's there, what's available, that helps spread the word of letting everyone know of the openness and the transparency that we have here in Idaho. One of the key things we talk about, it's not just our websites, but we talk about this as a whole ecosystem. And it's not just, the websites itself, but how do we expand on that? A couple weeks ago, I'm trying to remember 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when Secretary McGrain talked about campaign finance. We put a link on our site to link to Vote Idaho and all of the data there. It's so important and so critical. So we really wanted to dive to say, this is a one-stop shop that you can go to and find as much information on Idaho as you can. So that was the standpoint and the vision and that ecosystem that we're trying to build out and that concept. And so several pillars, and those that have heard this, but I want to share, these are the 5 pillars that I really talk about from the standpoint of why is financial transparency and these other things so critical. There's a Pew Research study that shows the trust in government. And trust in government, both of them mentioned that earlier, we've talked about it nonstop, and I think it's the one that we continue on, is that trust in government is at an all-time low. What is that remedy? How do we solve that? What do we do to fix that? So from our small world, that was my vision and direction, almost 13 years ago at this time, to say, what could we do to help restore that trust? And so from that standpoint was to say, okay, government trust is low and financial. Those are 2 key areas. And you say, if we don't have it there, then where do we have it? If we can open the doors, shine the light, shine that spotlight on those areas, that would make such a difference. So that Pew Research study, that graph shows from 1958 to today, it peaked in 1964. It said the amount of citizens, and in particular it was trust in their federal government. And it actually reached a peak of 77%. And then it dropped off, and I love to show it because there's a little spike there that shows in 2001, 9/11. And as you remember that and you really think about that, now my son is 26. He doesn't remember it. He was too young. And he wasn't, he was at the time, he was 18 months old. And so from the standpoint of, my daughter was in kindergarten, and I remember her drawing a picture of the Twin Towers and the airplane flying into it as a kindergartner, and she still has that. If you remember that time frame, you could not buy a U.S. flag anywhere. And we really were united as a nation. And there was that, we even had on our pay stub, United We Stand. That was some of those things from Flight 93, where those passengers in the back said, let's roll. And we came together as a nation. Well then, from 2001 to today, it's down to 10 or 11%. And sometimes it's a joke and people say, well, I want to know who are the 11% of the people that trust their federal government. I really want to know them. We won't take a survey here, but the interesting point is how many people, the closer you get to home, trust your government more. So yes, we have our 4 congressional members. We can call, we can reach out, we can get them. But how hard is it to turn that huge aircraft carrier and to make change and to have trust? Maybe our state officials, our legislators. But if you can reach out and you know your county officials, your mayor, your city council, your county commissioner, your sheriff, you see them at the grocery store and you can reach out and you can make that difference. The one other thing that's interesting as you dive in here is that cultural change. There's several that still push and say, and I know there's some state employees here and those that are watching online, they've been used to this. But there's that change of a new employee coming on, like, my information is all out there? But it's changing that culture, that mindset, and even there's so many times where people say, well, make them submit a FOIA, make them submit a public information request, and then we'll give them the information. But changing that culture to say, hey, look, in our case, it's very specific of what's from public employees, what's data is available and public versus what's private and confidential. It's very clear in Idaho Code in 74 chapter title 74 and 100, this section there, it's very clear. And so from our standpoint, so many agencies would say, well, just make them request it. But we're changing that whole culture diagram there to say, if it's public and open, then let's put it out there. And one thing I say is like, hey, look, I work for the citizens, I turn in a timesheet, our employees turn in a timesheet, that's their billing, that's their invoice. Every 2 weeks, and then we process that. If you're in a business or company or something else with goods and services, when you turn in that bill of lading there, you're saying, okay, who's paying that? Well, the taxpayers are. And so they have a right, as you're being paid, then your information is public. Now, of course, deterring fraud, we hope that that's a great opportunity where we can say, hey, look, if there's more eyes and ears looking and searching on the website, then they can help deter fraud and look for those things. Now, there are times where I can be honest to say the bad guys know this as well. And so maybe it does cost some more, and time permitting, tell stories of different fraud things that we've seen pop up as well. But I hope this increases accountability. Having this information and knowing that it's out there truly does increase that accountability. And so I told the story many, many times of, growing up on the farm, my mom had great ears. She's part wolf, and so she could hear and tell things that were coming from the standpoint of knowing if I was trying to reach into that cookie jar, she would know Brandon's trying to sneak in there. I love my cookies, you can tell. And so from the standpoint of if mom's watching, the citizens are watching, are we going to purchase that? Is that really needed? Knowing that all that is going to be posted on the website. So it's that accountability, that mindset change. And my dream, I hope that someday that we're sitting in here and some legislators pop open and they're in a committee hearing and they have their laptop and they're like, hey, they pull open Transparent Idaho, whatever, and they can pull open that information, pull it up, say, well, here's what it shows here. Or they're looking for that information to have those data-driven decisions. So those are the whys. Is that all-encompassing? No, but those are the ones that we really drive and stay on. And I really try from the standpoint of, as you look at data, it's campaign, election data, campaign finance that we have, whatever it may be from public records that we're going to hear in the next session. I'll give a plug for the next 2 or 3, open meetings and public records. It's a standpoint of, is it accessible? Is it easy to use, easy to read? And can you quickly, is it even usable? And I think that's what's interesting to know as times change with artificial intelligence. And the thing that I push is how easy and how do we make this, we have so much data, how do we make this consumable? And I talk from the same standpoint of, where do you get your news? Growing up, there was 3 TV stations. And I grew up in Preston, we didn't even get the Idaho TV, we got out of Salt Lake. And so from the standpoint of, I knew Walter Cronkite was on, and that's what he would say, and that's the way it was. And you knew that information and where it came from and that. Today, how many TV stations are there? And the interesting thing, there's a lot of data and research of where do citizens get their data and information for their news? Facebook. The all-truth bearing of Facebook, right? So it's always fun to mess with the algorithms, to switch to say I'm from the far left, I'm from the far right, I'm in the middle, just to see what type of information I can get. It's all fun, but that's for another day, another story, right? But where do you trust where there's so much data? So that's, I think, key parts of is accessible, understandable, and usable is where do you trust and have that data and where's it coming from? So I'm going to jump over here and I just want to, oh good, the mouse is working for us. So I just want to quickly go share on 2 things, do a kind of a narrative and just kind of a quick walkthrough of these 2 areas. So from Townhall, Idaho, and then Transparent Idaho, and then just dive in a little bit more on both sides. We recently went live with a new version here of Townhall, Idaho, those that have been on it. But again, the website is townhall.idaho.gov. And this was a joint coordination with Governor Little and his office and ours that we put together and went live with, as Betsy mentioned. And the key piece was, this was during the COVID timeframe, but the standpoint was, how do we help, whether you're in Sandpoint or Bonners Ferry, or if you're in Montpelier, or you're in Salmon, or you're in Meridian, how do I participate? And so from this standpoint, the request was, this is all state agencies, so there's over 200 boards, councils, commissions that post their information on Townhall. And the point was to help make that possible. So this defaults to today. You can do all the searches, but we can see I think there was, well, there's what, maybe 5 or 6 that are listed for today. The quick thing is we have a listing on, do your searches, pull open a particular one. Like yesterday we had our Board of Examiners and the Land Board that the Secretary and I had and participated in as individuals in our capacities. Superintendent is in the State Board of Education meeting. So let's take a quick look there. So we can see the description, the virtual, so you can participate from wherever you're at, contact, the agenda, the notice, and then after we have 4 agencies to post their actual recording of the meeting. So if you missed it, can come back and look at it, take place. Again, and we wanted to have a trail of where for citizens and users to quickly come back and see when was this posted, when did that take place. The other thing that we received feedback was, I just want quick details. You can quickly click that without having to leave the page and just quickly get that there. And again, from a high standpoint here, the one that I love the most is having the subscription. So I subscribe to Land Board, Board of Examiners, the ones I know what those are supposed to be, but I have a couple other agencies. Maybe you have an interest in fish and game, or something with snowmobiles or four-wheelers or something like that. So maybe you could say, I want to subscribe, and you can come up here, subscribe, and get an email that would notify you, hey, this agency is having a meeting, having a hearing, and here's the agenda. The other part that we'll have here, it's really close. Right, I'm looking at my team, and we're like, we've been pushing on this. We wanted a 208 number so we could text. For whatever reason, and here's my thing, so I get, I don't know, 10, 15 spam calls, and they have 208 numbers, but we're struggling trying to get a 208 open number that we can have. So as soon as we get that, then we'll have a 208 number. We didn't want to have like a New Jersey number that you're getting a text saying, hey, Idaho Transportation is having a meeting tomorrow. So we're looking to get an open 208 number, and you can sign up and get SMS, text, alerts, notifications, and subscriptions. So the key part right now, this is for state agencies, boards and commissions right now, and a great discussion that we've been having and coordinating, and I know they would like to, is, and maybe even the Secretary could opine on that too, is I know the local governments would like to be on something like this as well. So from a good little head shake, yes. The counties, the cities, even the school districts are ones that are like, hey, and other citizens are asking, hey, when can we have that? So that's something we've built and designed so in the future we could easily add other local governments when that becomes possible there. So, but from the town hall standpoint, it really was to say, hey, look, it's your government, it's your opportunity. You can participate wherever you are in the state. You don't have to come to the great state of Ada to participate and be there. And I appreciate and give a shout out to the legislature as well. They've done a lot over these past couple of years, especially during since COVID, to make the legislative committee process a lot more open. And I have to give a shout out there to be able to participate, whether you're testifying on a committee as well. So those are the parts, the pieces, having more open government that you can participate and see. So again, if you have interest in a particular agency, subscribe and log on. You know, it's kind of like hit the like and smash button and participate and join and be part of it. So, but that's with Town Hall. We look to continue, and if you have feedback on there, or suggestions or things, those are things we'll take as well to add and continue to develop and build. So we built this in-house with our development team, and if there's suggestions, we can quickly make those modifications. So Let me jump now back to Transparent Idaho. I'm just going to do a quick overview, kind of high-level pieces and drive around of area, and then I'll come back and dive in a little bit further, okay? So our first piece here, we call this our mega menu, this up here in the top, the workforce salary, state, county, city, local district, and education. When we look at our Google Analytics from our pages, it's in the high 90% of what everyone comes for is this, workforce salary information. So everyone wants to know what everyone's making, for whatever reason and piece that is, but that's the case. Not only at the state level, but what we drag and identify and see for local, county, city, and others that we see as well in education. So that's why we expanded and put that here. State government, you'll be able to dive in and say here, and the one thing that I would give as a tip and trick, we built a page for all 44 counties, but we decided let's build a page for each state agency. So there's 82 state agencies. If I come down here and click on state agencies, let's say I'm going to click on the Board of Education. Here's the page for the Board of Education. And you'll have their budget, their actuals, their employee pay rates, their top vendors by spend, and then the top vendor, most used vendor that they have. So Verizon Wireless, there we go. Way to use those phones there at the board, keeping in communication. But the key piece as well, I just drive it a little bit further down, is now I can look at every single transaction for the Board of Education, their travel, and any agreements and contracts that the Board of Education has. So those are quick things at a high level at the employee for the state. Counties, if you had your 4th grade Idaho history, you still can do all of know your license plates, and you can sing the song Ada, Adams, Bannock, Berlick, Benoit, Bingham, and all those, right? But not everyone is new and knows Idaho, or there's a lot of newer people, you call them cows, right? The Californians, Oregonians, and Washingtonians. They may not know all the counties, but you can click on the county page and highlight the ones if you do know them, or mouse over and select and get your counties there. At a high level, on this main county page, you can see all the summary data for all 44 counties. So what I mean by that is here you can see the budget, the expenditures for the counties, the per capita expenditure, and then the revenue. So this is for all 44 counties. So for example, here on expenditures, you can see from Ada all the way down to Lewis County. And the one little I love to share here is switching that over to a percent in the being able to then do the comparisons. And here's our table down here, but this purple is public safety. And again, now I can mouse over and see how much for each of the counties, percentage-wise, what are they spending on public safety? So their jail, their sheriff, prosecuting attorney, etc., juvenile. Again, our key part was we spent a lot of time working with the county clerks, and a huge shout out to the county clerks. I know there's several that are listening today, and just thank them for their work and their service and being able to do this. The key part with all of this county data was being able to help standardize it. What Ada County may have coded and targeted and what they had listed was different than Canyon or Kootenai or Twin Falls or Bannock or Lewis and Clark counties, whatever it is. So we spent a lot of time working with them to standardize the data so it was consistent and that we could review that. And so now you can do your apples to apples. And if you're a county commissioner or official, you can come in and say, well, why are we, how are we compared now to another like-sized county? And an interesting part, I'm going to dive in for just a second with the sheriffs. We had this conversation with Caden from Idaho Ed News the other day, and we were talking about this of sheriffs that have border counties on this side, I'm pointing to the west, have Oregon and Washington, and they have a little dispensaries that are on that side of the states on that side. And they're dealing with drugs and other crimes on a lot of those counties. If your county has an interstate, there's a lot of traffic going through and things that take place there. But maybe your Lemhi County, you're not bordering Oregon, Washington in that sense, and you're not on an interstate, there's going to be different needs, purposes of what your sheriff and what the costs may be. And an interesting part is, well, then how many miles do the county deputies have to travel? Idaho County is a large one. Lemhi is a long rural county. So there's all the context behind the data as you're looking at that. The other part I would talk with the local governments here, with county, city, local taxing districts and education. My whole vision is we always had the state data for the last 13 years. But for local governments, it was my vision of how could we have one place to go to that you could look and find this. And so you could go to Transparent Idaho, find the 44 counties, the 198 cities that are incorporated, the 193 LEAs, local education associations, the 800 plus taxing districts. That's a lot of websites to go to, and they're all in different areas and named differently. So that was the vision, was how do we have one place to go to, to have all of this information. So back in, I'm going to bounce with my team. House Bill 73 from, I think, 2021, 22, 21, gave this push that all local governments were to post their financial and audit information on Transparent Idaho and work with us. So that bill took place to help coordinate this, and now we have all of that data here. So from the cities, again, summary, we can look at all as at a whole level, holistic level, or you could dive in and see from the cities. And in this case, let's say Aberdeen, you can see their budget, their revenues, their expenditures, the salaries for their employees in Aberdeen. And then the one key thing here is that with the documents, now we can actually see the budget, their audit for the various fiscal years. And with this, now again, 198 cities. Now Elk River, I'm trying to remember if they have theirs on the back of a napkin, but again, the point being we have that standardized and worked with them to help drive and put this together here. But those are key things, I think, for users, if you're looking at a particular entity or city, to dive in to look at this. And I think my vision would be to say, how do we continue to explore to have even more data? But that's over time, and we'll get there. Let me come back up now to the local districts. With the locals, we have the urban renewal districts, and then there are 42 different types of taxing districts. By that I'm saying you have like the abatement, you have cemetery, library, water, highway districts, I think I've named it, but ambulance. There are the 42 different types of taxing districts. So let's say, for example, I want to click on cemetery, and then I want to type in Franklin. So now I have all the cemetery districts for Franklin County, and there's the best one there in the Whitney. I grew up in the suburb of Preston and Whitney, so here's Whitney, and we can say, you can see how much it is, how much expenditures the Whitney Cemetery District. So when you're on Jeopardy and Ken Jennings is asking you information about cemetery districts in Idaho, you will know the answers when you can't sleep or anything like that. You'll know the data and information. But again, the revenue, here's the actuals. Now, keep in mind, based on the size, some entities are small enough that they don't actually do an audit because they're so small, and if they had to pay for an audit, it'd probably take up all of their revenue to pay for an audit. So those are one things that we're looking to work with the legislature of the dollar amounts of an entity of doing a financial review versus having an audit being done. Because some of these places, so trying to find that dollar threshold and working with them and the legislature going forward of what's the best approach that we can still have a review, maybe not a full-blown audit, but how can we look at something else? So now, there are over 800 of these small taxing districts. So those are listed here. And then education. Just at a quick high level on education, we work with the Board of Education and the department originally, and now the board. Their part was they send us a pipeline of the data to us. So we're not grabbing from all 193 LEAs, their school districts and charters, but we're grabbing this as one pipeline from them. This year over year, we receive annually, and that is audited. And then this transaction detail, we just received this spring. And the transaction detail, we have, and this we receive quarterly from the Board of Education, who receives that quarterly from the school districts, the LEAs. In this case, you could look up, let's see, how about Chalice? We haven't picked on Chalice today. And then we could do by, we have the last 3 fiscal years. And see all the expenditures, revenue, and there's close to, I believe, 30 million rows of data. Now, when I talked earlier in my whole spiel at the beginning, a data dump, how do we make this better? And I'll talk about that, so keep that as a little pinpoint there of talking of the education data, of future of what we'll do here. But that's what I just want to share. Again, you can dive into this year over year by fiscal year and by school district as well to look at a high-level summary, year over year expenditures and revenue as a school district, and dive in there, and then look at the actual transaction level. Now, those that follow the legislature, and education is not a very hot topic, so we didn't think it was important to go over much, but you know, the key piece here, there's been billions spent and appropriated to school districts. And so there has been a lot of requests. It's a hot topic, school choice, everything else that's taking place. So the key piece here is helping give more data to help expand on that further. If there's been billions that have been appropriated, where did it go? And I'll show an example here a little bit later on of, did it go to administration? Did it go to the actual instruction? Is it going to the yellow school buses? Is it going to nutrition? Where does that money go? And so being able to do a comparison by school district to school district, how are they spending and what's the per dollar student? And though I have nothing on this piece, but I think maybe a tie is then you could tie and put what were their test scores? Is there a correlation or not? And tying on how much is being spent. So that was the quick high level there of the overview and function there, but I want to dive in and just share a couple key things that I think will be valuable for you. Some of you have seen these, others I want to just dive in a little bit more and give you some other tips and tricks that I think will be super helpful. So back on the home page, we build a Google type search, and the default is state workforce. I'm going to type in, let's just do the controller's office. I'll be transparent. The one little caveat, if you type that in, it didn't do anything until you put your mouse over for whatever reason, but you put your mouse, you can see the drop down. So I could select the controller's office, it has job titles, or there's no one that has the name of controller in their name, but if someone had controller in their name, it would list all the employees that. But I'm going to come back, click on the state controller's office. This will pull open all the employees as of last night. So it's updated nightly on this piece. So we have here, if I come down to the bottom here, I'm going to say, as of last night, I had 123 employees at the state controller's office. Again, think of this, this visualization is not very helpful at this case, in this scenario, but the data down below is very helpful. So just think that you're in a spreadsheet, being able to take that and dive in. I'll geek out like the secretary geeks out. I love to geek out on this side and go down the rabbit holes. But just think of this. Let's say, for example, you want to say who's the highest paid. Okay, so I make $128,690. You want to know a quick little trick? So does he. So does Treasurer Ellsworth, and so does Superintendent Critchfield. We all make the same because it's in statute. But then you can see hourly, listing annually, hourly. Here's the hourly rates for the employees in our office. And also see the start date. Let's say, okay, let's see Patrick Kirby started in our office October 20th, 1981. PK's awesome. He's still there. He helped run our mainframe. He helps do a lot of stuff with our Luma system. He's amazing. But he's still going, and he's celebrating his 44th year of our office, all 44 years. So, but I'm super excited to see I'm number 7th on the list there of seniority of having been at the controller's office since August 14th there. So again, your useless trivia, but this is very powerful. I know one of the interesting things is public information requests. If I were to ask some of our media friends, how many of you may use this because they look up to say, okay, what's someone being paid currently? Or what were they, as a former employee, looking them up? What were they paid? Or are they active now? What's going on? So these are very helpful and powerful. We received a request yesterday. Give us all state employees, their pay rates, when did they start? Again, that's all right there, and you could grab that. Now, one other little quick thing is, again, you could export that out to a CSV file. Whatever you have down here, you can export. There is one little caveat. It has to be under 250,000 rows. Jackie, is that correct? So if it's more than 250,000 rows, you can reach out to us and we can help get you the data. But knowing there's only 123, that's pretty simple. But that's the quick little tip trick there on the employee side. And again, looking at whether it's a name, an agency, or job title. If you want to look correctional officers, type in correctional officers and pull all those up. Now I'm going to switch over here and I'm going to type into vendor. So we're looking at the financial side. I'm going to type in donut. I see a package of a dozen donuts coming in, and I'm just going to hit enter here. And this is where I want to show you and dive in a little bit more. So, in fiscal year 2020, there was $31,000 spent on donuts, the state agency. Now, I know a little bit more of what was taking place. If I mouse over in the snow, this says State Tax Commission. Well, we look at the year, 2020. It was COVID. And so I know that this is actually COVID money. It was COVID relief funds. And if we switch here, default is agency title, because we can see the agencies listed here. If I come over here and put, let's say, fund title, now I can see that that is CARES, COVID money. And again, operating, trustee, and just by switching the information here. But here's the interesting part. I'm going to come back to agency because the fun part here was, okay, so I know this is tax commission, health district. There's our great oxymoron, right? Health district and donuts. I'm like, okay, so what's the story behind the health district one, Coeur d'Alene, having $27,000 worth of payments to donuts? Well, I'm going to click on that. So I clicked on that, and I can see they spent $27,000 in fiscal year 23, and they spent $10,000 in fiscal year 22. But if we dive down here into the data, and we come over here and look at the vendor, those are, and I'm trying to go slow here because my team says go slow, don't drive fast, Brandon, here. I get all excited. But now we can see, oops, sorry, the name of the vendor was Giant Donut Marketing. It wasn't donuts in anything. It wasn't, Guru Donuts or whatever, or Pastry Perfection. It was Giant Donut Marketing. So it was for marketing purposes that Health District 1 needed. And again, so knowing the context and the story behind it, that's where being able to dive in and look at that information. And that's a lot of, again, and then you'll have your filters listed here. And I can take that filter back off and come back to where we were. Now, one other quick example. I know this one's used a lot. People want to say, well, how much is being spent on travel? So I'm going to just show a quick little trick of the best way of searching. So I'm on the home page. If I come down, here's these quick links, and I will show you those in just a second, but I'm going to click on vendor payments. We can see top vendor spent in the whole state, most used. It's actually Office Depot. Amazon, and Granger gets it done. So, and I don't know why City of Blackfoot, but that's what I'm going to dive in and look. Why is City of Blackfoot one of the top vendors? But that's for another day, and I'll dive down that rabbit, right? But here's vendor transactions. I went fast, so let me slow down here. So when I clicked on access the report, here is what I clicked on. So this has, in this case, has 21 million rows of data. But here's how we can quickly search through this. We have fiscal year 20 through today. And what we do with on the financial data, this is updated every 2 weeks. So it's updated nightly, but we have a rolling 2 weeks. And the reason that came from that standpoint was we had some cyber bullies that looked on Transparent Idaho, saw payments, and they were able to track and see that. And so we put a 2-week lag. So everything has a 2-week lag on here to allow either the ACH, direct deposit, or the check, we call them warrants, they're warrants, the checks to actually be redeemed. But, so here's, there is so much data here, but I want to come down here and I want to type into account summary, and I'm going to type in travel. And hit the filter button. And there we have employee in-state travel, employee out-of-country, employee out-of-state, and miscellaneous travel. So I'm going to click on employee out-of-state travel. Hit done, and then hit apply. And now we have every single out-of-state travel for the last 7 years. And let's take for example, I want to switch and I want to put on here, let's just look at last fiscal year. And now we're down to 29,000 rows. Now, Boise State list is the highest. A lot of that is going to be, again, out-of-state travel. I don't know, maybe that's the football team, basketball team, I don't know. Maybe it's a lot to the band and everyone else. But we can dive, health and welfare, Department of Lands. We've got to take a look at that one, Phil. See, state police, here we go again, diving down, looking at all the agencies for that out-of-state travel. The one thing I want to share, just a quick little fun story. I then took this same example, I exported it, put it out, saved that CSV Excel file. I then dumped it into OpenAI, and I said, look for fraud, waste, and abuse or other opportunities of where we can find efficiencies in the state for out-of-state travel. Now, I had it on my laptop, but I'm using the machine here, so I don't have signed into my AI here. But the one thing that was interesting is that popped back and shared, here's some unique transactions. Here's ones that were over amount, or here was a hotel that was for a large amount. Here was an Uber that was for $900. But it took that long to find all that that was the power of the AI diving in here and looking at this. So the interesting part that I found, and I think this was the thing that we'll take back, and I've shared with the Department of Administration and others, is saying, okay, it came back and said, it looks like you have a lot of state employees that do their own travel. There isn't a central booking. So then I said, how much could the state save based on $3 to $5 million of out-of-state travel? How much could the state save if we had a contract with Delta or Alaska or Southwest? Knowing that we always go to, state employees are flying from Boise to Spokane, Boise to Salt Lake, Boise to Seattle, Boise to Denver. How much could the state save? And it said we could save, based on our things and others, we could save close to $1 million. All right, there you go, Doge Committee. Save $1 million just by having that, that mass, being able to have that mass contracting work for that, rather than the employees doing that. So it's just something as an idea and a concept there, being able to take that. And then, of course, I had fun until I got ran out. And I'm the cheap guy. I'm very conservative, so I don't have the paid version. And then I did it for, the hotels. I did the Uber and live share. And then it said, you've done your max for today. And I'm like, all right. So then I switched to Claude and kept going. But those are kind of the details of diving in here on the state data. As I come back, again, you can dive into the local governments. We do not have transaction level at the local government level, except for the education. I know the counties and cities, they're like, Brandon, don't push that quite yet. So down the road, maybe in the future, we'll have that transaction level for the counties. But the key piece here is, how do we make this easy and consumable? And I always say, make this easy that my grandpa can get on here and find that. And I think one of the things I want to share with you on this quick links, in the additional resources, we've built like 20 different quick little YouTube videos. You can come out here and watch. Didn't pick it today, but you could come out here, watch the YouTube video, and have a tutorial on the website of how to find things and make that easier there. The other thing that I would share with you, state agreements and contracts. I did show on each individual state agency. You can look that up. The other one here is, this is the main page if you click on state contracts and agreements. So this lists all of them here, and Jackie helped build this a long time ago, but she won't say it. She's left it and it needs a little more tender care. So we actually have a new version of this coming out here soon. But if you actually click on agency, and I could come down here and I'll be transparent, click on the controller's office. There you can see now all the contracts and agreements that we have at the state controller's office. And if let's say, In-Time Tech, then we list all the information for that contract that we have with In-Time Tech. I know the sponsor of this bill wants to take it further, so we added on a couple new things, and we'll be adding on like what's the actual financial. An interesting piece with all this is the Deputy Attorney Generals were spending a significant amount of time trying to redact information from these contracts. And so we said, okay, we went back to the bill sponsor and said, we'll list them all, but we won't have the actual contract or that. If they want that, they can go out, we'll give the contact and say, here's, if you want to get that contract, here's the person to go to and get that. There was just so much time and effort having to be spent on redacting, and so that was a kind of a compromise working with all the Deputy Attorney Generals and from each of the state agencies to how do we balance that with these thousands of contracts. And so that was just a little background there to help understand what was taking place there. So that's the key piece there with the contracts and agreements. And our public records, this is our own, but I'll give a plug. This is for a future one. Come back, and I can't remember the dates in January, and Betsy will talk about those at the end here as we wrap up. But public records, again, we take the high level of, there are several that we do quite often. For example, I won't use the term we use in our office. I'll just keep that to myself. But there's groups that come out and contact us monthly, and they want to know who hasn't redeemed their checks yet. Then they contact, and we call them bottom feeders, because they come out and they grab and they like, hey, you haven't cashed your check yet, Jess, and it's for, this amount of money. We know where we can find it. If you let us know and sign off, we'll keep 30% of it, and we'll tell you where you can find it. And so they do that, and they ping, and that's public, so they can request and get that. So we actually have that where those guys can come and get the uncashed warrants, personnel, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of other information we have, but I'll give my plug for public records as we go forward there. As we look forward in the future here, I want to hit on a couple things. I did share what I did personally with AI, but I want to share a piece that what we're working on, and if I can find it here. I'm going to type in here. This is a beta here of what we're working on, so I'm going to type in here. Compare the public safety expenditures of Ada, Canyon, and Kootenai over the past 2 years. So while that's pulling open, how can we use AI to help pull out all this data? If there's millions and millions of rows. How can we use that in where you can type in and say, for example, Medicaid or education, there's a lot of data. How do we help make that easier that the citizen can then dive in, type in their question, and get that information? Fortunately, so see, that's why I call it beta. But normally it would show and pop out a little graph, and it had, here's Ada and Canyon, and here's how much it's changed and grown and all that information. So, but those are examples that we're playing with from the AI piece to make that more friendlier and easier for the citizens and users to have. The other piece that I want to share with you, and I know that's small font and text there, but one that I mentioned with education data. I'd love to have a one-pager for each school district or even a school and mock it up and say, okay, you could click on it and say, here's the school, here's the number of students in that school, here's the average spend or median spend, and then here's all the dollar breakdown that's being spent per student expenses, and how do you compare that? And now I can compare that from school district to school district or elementary to elementary or whatever. So again, that's just a concept now that we're starting to gather that data, but this is where I'm pushing my vision of our team to build out this next step here. So this is something that we've mocked up. This is just a mock-up here of what we're looking to do. And then this last piece, total different one, is I would love to show the financial health of an entity. So for example, we would have maybe 10 metrics or whatever and say, what's their debt? How much do they have in their rainy day fund? What's their PERSI, OPEB? I mean, not to geek out or details, but all these metrics you could dive in to say, how well is City X doing? And then put a green, yellow, red stoplight, or like a fuel gauge. Or like in this case, I'd click on general fund and see their cash fund balance is sufficient, they're really struggling in their change of cash position, and their sustainability is okay, it's cautionary. So again, if we could build something like that, then the citizens can be aware of and know, how is my city doing? How's my county? How's my state doing? So those are something that we're looking to build out as this fiscal health as well. So those are the future steps, future pieces that we're looking to build out there. And with that, as we kind of transition and put this all together here, I still want to call this my trust sandwich. So trust at the beginning, show you all this data and everything else, but the key piece here is shining that light, like Judge Justice Brandeis said, the best disinfectant is sunshine. And so if we continue to shine that flashlight into those corners, open that up, we push that in our own office, I know the Secretary does as well. How do we continue to shine that and push that? And my key thing to you, those here in the audience and those watching online, I would say, what would you like to see on Transparent Idaho? Or some changes or tweaks, or is there certain data that you would like to see? So we're adding a new one, a couple things here. We actually had a meeting a couple days ago of talking to how we can add some other things. Where do we put it? How do we add? So keep those in mind. Send those ideas and suggestions in. Here's all of our contact. So with that, just again, thank you. We appreciate what it is. This is our thing. I could go down and geek out in the fun stuff. I know last time the Secretary had one question, I think, on travel or expenses on, it was out-of-country travel for some legislators. We could actually dive in and see out-of-country and look and open the House and Senate and see how they're done. So with that, I'm going to turn the time and say thank you very much. And again, we love and appreciate what you as citizens do. You help keep us honest and on our toes, and that's our part here. And keep us, and how we can make this better, that it makes it better for everyone else. So with that, thank you so much. So I know we'll turn it for Q&A.
Please stay up there, because you're
do.
still on the hot seat. The questions are coming to you.
All right.
Nice job, thank you. I think it's always, for me, always a privilege to see how deep of a dive, whether it's donuts or anything else.
Right.
Donuts or pizza,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So thank you for all that, and just the expansion, I'll say, of Transparent Idaho has been one of the huge improvements that your office has led, so thank you for that. And just as a reminder, as we start the Q&A portion, for those of you who are in the room, there are paper cards available. Write your questions down on the cards, hold them up, and our Vanna in the back, Tyler, will be there to collect the cards and bring them up to us, so we'll be collecting those. Also, for the majority of you who are watching online, just as a reminder, you can send in an email to idogquestions@gmail.com, so IDOG questions@gmail.com, and we're monitoring that. And to kick it off, the question comes from Matt over in Pocatello. He's looking at the local taxing district information, so specifically he was looking at auditorium districts, but I think it applies to all of the local taxing districts. What are the requirements and the timelines to post, and are there penalties if you don't comply?
Great question, Matt. Appreciate that. So, we have our team. We call it our central repository team. A couple years ago, the legislation changed. It was the LSO audit office was the repository for all this financial data and audit information for all the local governments. That switched over with that House Bill 73, and so now our office receives all that. The deadline is December 1st, so that just passed. Our team's been working with all the entities to make sure they get it in on time and remind them and remind them and remind them. And then ours is to review and look to make sure that they send in the right standards and the right formatting, and that works. So then our team will then begin to post and have that information. So that's kind of the high level, the quick turnaround there. Now, the other question, there are some entities that may not turn it in. Some are small, others just may not, and I've read some news articles over even the last week or two, and I know over the past couple of years there's entities that are struggling, or they've had some fraud or different things take place. In this case, if someone does not turn in something to us, then we call them they're not in compliance. We are to report to the Tax Commission on January 15th to say, here's the list of all local governments that were in compliance. If they were not compliant, then we tell the Tax Commission these entities were not compliant, and they will not receive their tax distribution for that quarter. So there is some teeth to help make sure that they turn in their information. And there's a couple that are small, and they're like, they haven't turned it in. Some small cities, small taxing districts. So that was meant to be the teeth behind it to help push that and to do that. And I think hopefully in the standpoint of, I don't know if the right word's public shaming or public thing is, hey, it's everyone like Matt may be saying, hey, what's going on? These guys haven't turned it in. It's not on Transparent Idaho. And maybe that's an opportunity for an uproar and the public spotlight there to shine that. So.
Okay. In looking at this, I can't help but think of how much time and effort and angst this tool would have saved me early in my career as a reporter, and how hard it was to get some of this basic data by submitting public records requests. And I remember when you first started talking about the concept that rather than have to submit a request, it would simply be available to anyone. What a concept. I'm thrilled to see this, although you really got my hopes up with the contracts, because I remember many, many fights over getting the contracts, and I have to wonder, couldn't there be a way, similar to the way that you standardize county reporting, that agencies could standardize their redactions from contracts so that they could post full contracts without having to do these time-consuming individual reviews?
Now that all these cool tools are here, maybe you can come out of retirement, since it's so much easier to find this information.
I think that's a great point, Betsy and Phil, and along that line of how do we, maybe we can take that back, and these guys document that, how do we standardize that? I know you're going to have different contracts and different languages and different things of where it may be, so that may be that tough point, but maybe there's a cover sheet or high-level pieces that could say, here's some key financials, terms, length, other things, responsible parties, whatever.
Sure. Who's getting paid how much in taxpayer funds to do what?
Yep.
And why, and for how long? I mean, we know that's all public.
And it's interesting, I asked our team, like, what are still the high number of public information requests that we get? We still get a lot of employee or employee, public information requests on employees and stuff. But the number other one is contracts and agreements. And I think that's a key piece. And sometimes it's the competitor wanting to know, how much longer is this janitorial service going to be here at this entity? I want to, when that comes up in 2 years, I want to bid on it. So I've had that many times. Or so-and-so has that, they're a cousin to someone on the board. That's a great point. Let's find out, could there be some collusion or something like that?
I do have a follow-up. So thinking about the donut example, if people were to do a search on Transparent Idaho and come up with something that looked very compelling and surprising, like say how much agencies are spending on donuts, is there a way for them to contact your office and say, did I do this right? Have I done something wrong here to get this odd result that would make a heck of a story, but it also would look really bad if it weren't correct?
No, I think that's very fair, and our team would love to help. And we could help cross-check or validate or help do that. And now the other standpoint is we have an enormous data warehouse that has so much more information that we can help that's not actually on Transparent Idaho. So anytime, our team is here to help answer or take that or help validate information. And maybe a fun little story. This is the fun one, and some of you may have heard this. There was a state back in the Midwest, and there was, I believe it was a judge, had this incredible chambers, and then also had some expenses to a clothing store called Victoria's Secret. And they were able to track that down, found that, had an incredible story, an article on it. And then they says, well, I'm curious, are there some other agencies or anyone else spent money on this clothing store? Well, they found one. And they looked it up and like, there's another expenditure. And I always, after I tell the story, I have to go check on Idaho to make sure we're okay too. But so they went out, this reporter went out and checked, and they found this other payment to Victoria's Secret. Long story short, they thought, we have another story here and whatever. Long story short, it was this state agency had been paying for, Victoria's Secret actually owned a highway billboard. And a state agency was just marketing and had put something on this highway billboard, and that was their payment to that. So I had nothing. So it was the context. And I think that's a key thing, and probably something that, the secretary deals with in the election campaign laws, the context or what's behind it. You really have to dive down and ask maybe more questions behind that.
Okay, we have two questions that are pretty similar in nature. It's kind of interesting so specifically looking at, you mentioned before education's a hot topic in the state, so looking at some of the education transactions. So two parts to this. I guess the first one was just looking at some of the education numbers, it says that the revenue, it shows a negative number for revenue. So going back to context, the question is just, what does that mean? Why is it showing? Is it that their expenditures are more than their revenue, or is it a decrease? Any idea on why education would show a negative revenue number?
There could be several different reasons. I don't want to answer specific without knowing the details behind that, but there could be several things of why in that case. And in other cases, it could be in true accounting standpoint of where you have your debits and credits lined out, and you could have that and how that's lined out. So there could be several different reasons of why a negative amount could be listed there without knowing the specific details on those.
And then I guess just similar is it's a comment that one of them made was just wanting specifically for the State Board of Education as well as State Department of Education, just a detailed breakdown of revenue and expenditures, which I think is there, right? It's just a matter of knowing how to navigate.
It was maybe a follow-up with you, is meaning at the summary level, at the super high level?
They're specifically interested in special education.
Oh, special education. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we have that identified to that level, but that's something we'll take and dive back on that one. So if you guys make note of that.
Glasses.
Oh, I already did them.
Oh, you did this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. Next question that we've received online is, I think that if at all possible, agencies that have distinct boards and separate funds should have a report that's able to break down those separate funds and expenses by board. There are numerous industries that the questioner has heard feedback of not being able to see the individual board's financials, and it's frustrating and a point of contention with transparency. They would like to see something like that available on Transparent Idaho, and they thank you for what you've done. So could that be on there?
Definitely, I think if it's being able to break down, you can dive and break that down, but again, that's going to take some knowledge and understanding of how to get to that level if the agency has it set up with their structure that way. Otherwise, again, that's something we could do as well if we have that level at that identifier to put it in that coding structure.
This next one that came in online doesn't have a question. It sounds more like a compliment. It says, "Nice job, Controller Brandon WOOLF. I enjoyed nerding out with you. I'm impressed and proud of Idaho's work on government transparency. You, along with Secretary of State Phil and Ada County Clerk Triple, Idaho is doing a great job."
Well, thanks, Jana. I'll tell my wife thanks for sending that in. I think I told my mom that I was going to be doing this too.
It was not from one of your family members.
Oh, all
near
right,
as I can
okay. Well, great.
Well, another question, when you mentioned that every transaction for every state agency is now available through this, my ears perked up as a longtime investigative reporter. How current are those, and can anyone really just dive into those?
Yes, so I mean, they're current as of from 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So what's posted, that's out there for state agencies, every single transaction. There may be some that, in the work that we did initially, based on if there's some confidential, like what reminds me of like out of state police, they have alcohol beverage control. And so they have teenagers that go into stores to do the check on the alcohol beverage control. We redact those teenagers' names because they're of their age and what things. So if there's something along those lines, we'll still post it and put it on there, but it'll just say redacted in that column. So but we'll still post every single transaction will be on there, but if it's confidential data, we'll post and put confidential. I know there was a couple our team worked with, I think it was the state public defenders. They had some key things and transactions that were going on, and they asked us if we could redact. So again, the amounts are there and some other key things, but to help so it can't be identifiable back to a certain case or something like that, it'll say redacted as maybe the vendor or something like that. But I would say 98% of all the transactions, all the data is there.
Great.
And with our new Luma system, there is, in particular with the Department of Health and Welfare, there is so much more data. What we were used to receive from Health and Welfare was at a summarized level, and now being able to dive in, the Department of Health and Welfare is probably 75% of all transactions and all data and all things that we deal with in our office. It is massive compared to everyone else combined. Even Transportation Corrections, who are the next two largest state agencies. It's just massive of what takes place at Health and Welfare. So,
well, I have to say, I'm impressed. You have answered all the questions. And let's hear it for our State Controller, Brandon WOOLF. Well, I want to then, whoops, is that a, yes, it is. I want to once again thank all our partners, remind you that the video and slide decks from this will be posted at openidaho.org, and refer you to our website regarding our upcoming sessions in January on the Idaho Open Meeting Law and the Idaho Public Records Act. Those are always popular. We appreciate your questions. We appreciate our presenters. Thank you so much for coming.